Are you ready to alter your life? Because that's what's about to happen. If you're looking for a judgment-free zone where TMI doesn't exist, to have the conversations you're not supposed to have, and explore how to make small yet substantial, sustainable changes in your life to actually care for and empower yourself through physical and emotional fitness, then you're in the right place. I'm your host, Alyssa Alter, MOMDON, the Amy Poehler of vaginas, author, speaker, coach, former Broadway performer, certified Pilates instructor, pelvic health expert, comedian, co-founder of postpartum.com, mom on the mend, and board certified doctor of nothing. I believe that if we put as much time, energy, and discipline on our insides as we do our outsides, we'll be unstoppable. Welcome back. I know I say this a lot, and it's because I mean it. I am so happy that you are here. And I always say this too. I cannot wait to share this conversation with you that I had with the incredible Patricia Ladis. She's a doctor of physical therapy, and a certified breath expert. I forget the name. She says in the episode of what it's CBBA and what that all stands for. But it's very official. It's very real. And it is awesome because I say it a lot. I was about to say we say it a lot. And that's like we as in any fitness instructor, any wellness coach, any wellness person, anyone who knows anything about your pelvic floor, you know, when we're working on something new, when we are being challenged, when we are struggling, when we are learning, when we are stressed, when things feel hard, we're constantly told to pause and take a deep breath. And you know that in that moment, taking that deep breath feels good. And it also kind of, it can feel really patronizing, potato, or maybe one of them's right and the other one's wrong. Anyway, that's not what this episode is about. Really, breathing changes everything. And it really, sometimes you have really complicated things going on in your body and in your life. And the solution is as easy as breathing. But that doesn't mean that one deep breath, which will feel really good. It will. Because we're talking about it, let's just take a deep breath. It feels good. And it doesn't mean I'm not saying that taking one deep breath is going to change your life. What I'm saying, and what Patricia and I are talking about today, is that you can change your life starting with one breath. And so in this episode, we're going to be talking about how all of us have breathing dysfunction and what we can do to start addressing that, and how on a regular basis, practicing proper, optimal, full, integrated breathing changes our body's steady state, our homeostasis, our baseline, which makes us healthier all around. Like every aspect of our lives becomes healthier. And how this affects the way we move our body, the way we exercise, and how our goal isn't to do exercises forever. Our goal is to exercise skills that we can then integrate into our lives to live as efficiently, functionally, and optimally as possible. This conversation was really enlightening for me. I mean, I feel like a lot of things that she said it in a new way, or a way I've never heard before, that things I already understood suddenly make more sense, or I understand on a deeper level, which I know I can bring with me into my life and also into my work with clients and readers and you listener. And I really
learned a lot of new things also, because I will be the first one to tell you, I don't know everything. I don't. I know a lot of things, and I like to talk about all of the things so that we can learn together. And the thing that really got me from this conversation that I loved so much is at one point, Patricia dives in and like really nerds out on how when we inhale oxygen and we exhale CO2. Inhale O2, exhale CO2. And how that exchange needs to be balanced. And when it's off, it can actually shift our state of being and create anxiety and stress, and could even lead to a panic attack. And how, we see in movies, maybe we've seen someone in real life like breathe into a paper bag. That actually serves a purpose to restore any imbalance in our oxygen uptake and our CO2 output, to help us reach a steady state again. And how masking during the pandemic may have actually helped us manage our anxiety and stress. What? Oh my gosh. I know. Now, I'm not going to spill all the beans here, although I think that was like a lot of the beans. You're going to listen to the episode. I hope you love it. I want to hear from you. And I also want to thank those of you who have visited me over at Substack, and invite you, if you haven't been over to visit on Substack yet. I'm having so much fun over there. And based on what I've heard from you, you're having fun too. I recently launched this Substack because I work in a lot of areas, and I was feeling like my creative pursuits were pulling me in every single direction. And as a creative person, I don't want to just choose one direction and only do the one direction. It's like when I was dancing, like I dance, sing, and act, and I'm funny. I wasn't just a dancer or just a singer or just an actor or just a comedian. I was all of them. I am all of them. Although I'm not sure if I can still do a triple pirouette. I don't know. We can find out. Moving to Substack for me has felt like finding a home where all of the things that I work on, all of the different mediums I use to serve my mission of exploring the overlap of physical and emotional fitness, of giving us all permission to explore what it is we want, for us to let go of these internalized beliefs that we need to make ourselves uncomfortable at any cost in order to keep those around us more comfortable, as we abandon ourselves and get to the point where we just we give up everything for it, and to explore what it would be like to also make ourselves comfortable. Everything that I do to serve this mission of empowering all of us to figure out our right way belongs on Substack, versus me feeling like I'm over here, and then I'm over here, and then I'm over here, and then I'm over there, and now I'm over here, and I found something new, so now I'm doing this again, and then we're back over here, and we're all confused, and you don't know where to go, and I don't know what I'm doing. Everything lives on Substack now. So to make a long story short, too long, don't read. Is that even funny anymore? Anyway, check me out. It's alteryourlife.substack.com. And there's a free subscription option. There's a paid subscription option. And there's a 7-day free trial for the paid subscription, so you can try before you buy. Figure out if this safe space, if this altered world where there really is no such thing as TMI and it is a 100% judgment-free zone, feels good for you. All right. Enjoy this episode with Patricia, and I cannot wait to hear what you think.
When you get to peeling the layers of the onion back, right, you actually start to realize that the breathing has changed as well. Whether it was in response to the pain or an event, or you were out of the womb, the first thing we can control is our breathing. We can't even control our head or our body. We don't know what the hell's going on. You know, we're like, what? And the only thing we can control is our breathing. We hold our breath if we feel a noxious stimulus, right? We use our voice. The only reaction we have is really manipulating our breath. So it's the most innate reflex to tolerating an amazing way, right, to tolerate what you have to deal with, whatever that stimulus is. We manipulate our breath depending on what our needs are for that day, what emotional triggers might hit us. And so we could start just not breathing right. Now, what happens when you don't breathe right? Your diaphragm is not active to the best of its capacity. It might be a little bit, of course, but it might be completely shut down, like in pregnancy. So 100% of women have a breathing dysfunction during pregnancy because they cannot
that diaphragm cannot access its full range of motion. And when we don't have access to our full range of motion, we do not have optimal function.
And also, when you don't have the full breath, you even shave off more. You know, I talk about this 20, 30%. Like if let's say 100% is perfect, right? And now with the baby's girth, I'm down to like 30. My body might even shave off the 20 because it's like, ooh, that's a tight space. I don't want to go into a barrier because that might cause me pain or injury or problems. So I'm going to shave that off and protect her even more. And now you're like, take 2 bites of food and you're like, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. You know, you walk to the bathroom and you're like, I can't breathe. You know?
Or like, God forbid, you try to walk and talk at the same time. You try to pair two things together.
Totally.
You're done.
Yeah, you have to see me when I was in my patient, you know, like my treatment room and I was pregnant because I went all the way to like the day of my due date. And my patients were like, how are you still talking and breathing at the same time with that belly? And I'm like, because I work on it all day. No, I mean, yeah, look, I wasn't the same. I had to slow down. But the Brooklynite in me is like, go.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what was fascinating, what I'm tying into the first thing I started saying was I got to be at a conference with Dr. Andrew Weil. You know, who's been on Oprah, he's a big natural doctor, has a whole institute, fantastic, brilliant mind. And so we asked him, so this was at the Global Wellness Conference, and so basically the Global Wellness Summit, and he, someone said, so what would you do to amplify, what is the one thing you would do to amplify wellness in the world and in the kids, and in all these problems we're seeing just growing more and more, chronicity and all these things, right? And he said, teach them to breathe the right way. So I was heard, right? I felt heard at that point because all I do is basically try to rework the body to get back to efficiency. And that takes some work, okay? Sometimes it's a lot of help from me, but you've got to be involved as a patient. We're connecting, we're changing patterns, we're figuring out where the restrictions are, we're figuring out what other parts of the body aren't online that's forcing too much strain on one part of the body versus another. There's a lot of things. But understand that if you've had pain for longer than 3 or 4 weeks, that's considered chronic. And you will absolutely change your breathing in relationship to this new state of being in pain or discomfort or something's not working right. You know, it doesn't have to be like, oh my God, I'm in pain every day. So we have to recognize that we create a pattern of breathing that is based on our postures, our stress level, our pain level, and the changes that might be going on in our life, like if we're pregnant or if we just had, a surgery or if we have some sort of an actual, maybe musculoskeletal problem or even an internal medicine. Oh, I'm nauseous, something's wrong, my digestive, blah, blah, blah. Our breathing will shift because it has to accommodate. So you don't have 100% of the symptoms that you do because your body wants to deaden that. So it's a way to dissociate so you can still get by and kind of get through some of your life without this being like forcing you in bed. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people are really forced into bed with this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So bad. But for the most part, your breathing is there to try to adjust things in your physiology, in your brain, to try to tolerate what your current situation is. But when you clear this stuff, because I hear it all the time, I did my work. I had to have surgery, or I had to have PT, or I worked on the things I needed to. I changed my lifestyle. I got my diet in gear. I did some more Pilates. I did whatever I needed to do. And I feel so much better, but it keeps coming back. That sometimes is not that you're not doing enough. It is actually that your brain had such a holding pattern to that breathing. It had such affinity to using that breathing pattern all the time that even when you changed all this stuff, little tiny triggers, like a thought of like, oh, remember when this used to be painful? Your body might change the breathing. And then all of a sudden you have this reminiscent pain situation or emotional trigger or anxiety attack or, a manifestation of something that was your old self that now you've kind of healed from. So breathing is a huge thing to tap into for your general health, but also understand that it changes and little tiny triggers could put you back. So just kind of rework it again and create that new habit, which takes sometimes as little as a month, as much as like 18 months. But, generally, because the nervous system, but generally speaking, it's being committed to not freaking out that pain is coming back or that issue is coming back or that nausea is coming back, but rather, oh, my body's thinking that I'm in the bad place again. So let me just stop, change my breathing to what I know it's supposed to be. Bam, it should actually resolve.
Yes. And I say this a lot, like our breath is like the most direct line of communication to our autonomic nervous system.
Absolutely.
Which then sends all the messages everywhere. And I want everything you just said is incredible. And I love the way you articulate it. And something you said earlier, and then you kept kind of circling back around it, is that like our breath changes. We may hold our breath or change our breathing pattern as a result of a noxious stimulus. And I just that is so evocative. And I love that it is inclusive of all stimuli. So that could be a smell, like when I hear noxious, I think of a fume, but it could be a smell, which leads to nausea. It could be pain. It could be stress. It could be anxiety. It could be the person who has hurt you. It's not the overlapping. My favorite thing is this intersection, this overlapping, this connection of the physical and the emotional.
Yep.
They're separate, but they're not. They're
Correct.
the same. And that
it's embodiment. The body and mind are really kind of one.
They're one, and they're communicating. And
Sure.
It's like, maybe they use, I don't even want to say totally different languages, but like different dialects. I'm from New Jersey, you're from Brooklyn. Like when I used to tour and like the first time I was like in the South, they'd say things and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. They're speaking English. It's a different thing. They have different phrases, different things. So it's like our brain has like different phrases, our body has different phrases, and we just have to learn them and learn how to translate. Oh, my body's doing that thing. For me, like I have a history of IBS. So like I get diarrhea and it's like my brain at first is like, oh, what did I eat? And then it's like, wait a minute, Alyssa, no, actually, usually when this happens, it's more of an emotional trigger. Rather, like I get triggered by that way more than food. Although garlic and onions are a no go. I have a very big reaction. But
sure,
learning to translate when I'm feeling that, when I'm getting super controlling, go, I'm like, wait, that's not because I have to go. I'm responding to something.
Yes.
And my breathing is more shallow, rapid, so then I'm breathing in a way that my brain's like, see, we are stressed. So then my muscles tighten and then I breathe shorter. And then it's like, yeah, should we have a panic attack? Like, should we just go big or should we just stay here? Until
you're
it's like
100% right.
Until I'm like, wait a minute, like I'm typing at my computer in my apartment. Like,
there's no
slippers
bear in the
on.
room.
There's no bear trying to eat me. Like, everything is good.
Yes, but really, I've talked at this documentary about pain and things like that, and it's my favorite thing to say is like, your body doesn't know the difference between that stressful email coming through, or your boss being like moving up a deadline, or a bear is going to eat you. It's literally right there in the room, and it's going to come at you. It doesn't know the difference. So then I say to myself, okay, so what happens? One, right? Your body goes, oh my God, I don't want to be here right now.
Because we got that noxious stimulus.
That's right. So it's kind of like toxic to your body, and your body's going, ooh, this is bad. So it stops you, it dissociates you from the area. So you just pull back by, I'm not here, right? And then your body goes to a rigid place, right? Now, would your body, okay, so it thinks that horrible email was a bear that just came into the room. So would you stop and have a sandwich? No. Would you stop and have sex with your partner?
Absolutely not. We don't have time for that.
So when you live in this chronic, steady state of stress, where you have these highs and lows, but really you're kind of in a stress state, that bear's in the room the whole time. So if your body goes, I'm not digesting, I'm not going to even give her thirst, I'm not telling her to go to the bathroom, I'm not telling her that she's going to be able to reproduce, I'm not telling her that she's going to be able to snuggle and feel good and like be in her lovely pleasure state. I'm too busy saving her life. So you won't have all of these functions that we need for optimal health to occur if your body is stuck in that state. And the biggest hurdle, I think, is for people to recognize, because everybody's like, well, I'm going to speak about women. I am woman, hear me roar. I could do it all. I'm in the workforce. I could do it. I should deserve this and equality and equity and all this stuff. But you have to recognize that even men and women are in a different state today. And those little triggers, even just being in a poor posture, your brain starts to think you're in depression. Yes. Because normally, when you're not in these, you would never be in that posture in nature. Would you ever be sitting like this for what?
Yeah,
other
like
than to type
over,
keyboard
and collapsing in on yourself.
No.
Yeah.
So you would be picking the food, you'd be trying to find shelter, you'd be walking around, you'd be cleaning,
moving.
You'd be moving. Our body is designed to move. So when you start realizing, okay, I'm just going to stand up, shake it out a little bit every half hour. I'm going to drink a lot of water so I could go to the bathroom all the time and get myself to just kind of have these moments where I'm getting up and around. I'm still as productive, maybe more. I am still doing very well. I'm actually feeling clearer in my brain. I feel like my muscles are working. I don't have as much pain. Like all of these things, it's just a spiraling effect. So it's very, very important that we understand that we have to change our breathing, because in the current state of affairs, you're almost knocking out your diaphragm more than you're engaging it. Right? You're just, day-to-day life right now is just not, I mean, if you drive, if you're commuting, you're sitting, you're this, you're that, it's not the best chair for you, maybe you don't fit in it right, you're all sorts of verklempt and all sorts of slouchy and all sorts of this and that. So we have to really work on that.
All of those postures, like you're saying, that is communicating something to our brain.
Yep.
That's also, there are all those studies about like doing the Superman pose, before giving a big speech. And that's because that posture in your body is sending a message to your brain. And you probably know the statistics better than I do, but like there are more nerve signals going to our brain than coming from our brain. So when we can change our physical posture, our breathing pattern, that sends messages to our brain that again changes that state of being in the most holistic way, meaning in all the ways, in a whole spectrum way of things. So yes, it's incredible. And I love that two-way street. I think it also helps us, like, the way things are now, we all have been living in chronic stress for years.
Sure.
And probably like if you live in the tri-state area, I've only really ever lived here. So I toured through places, so I can't speak to everywhere else. But like we were probably living in a state of chronic stress before that also, especially if you live in or near the city.
Yes.
That...
I don't want to touch anyone.
It's like we've been like that for so long. And I feel like this understanding that like we can change our breath pattern, even just a little bit, is going to change so much that instead of feeling like we are just being consumed by the like tidal wave of stress and fear and anxiety that like is in the world, it's starting to dissipate. Maybe, I don't know. We're still running high. That you do have the power to do something. Like, like you don't have to be swallowed whole. Like you can stand among the shitstorm.
And I think, there's been this kind of like new, like, wellness, we have to work on our wellness, self-care, this, that, the other. And a lot of people being like, just breathe. And what's the problem is that you can stop and you can breathe a few deep breaths and you do feel better. You change, right? But people are like, I don't have time to sit here and just like do a bunch of breathing. So the people who really need it that are not clued into that won't actually subscribe to that. So when people come, right?
Absolutely not. And especially
like, I'm not going to sit
when
there and
it's like, and I'm not trying to make it dig, but like if I come in with like a flower crown and crystals and essential oils and I walk into like the CEO of Blackstone and I'm like, we're just going to breathe. He'll be like, are you effing kidding me?
Yeah.
Like we need to really, and also like when it's so esoteric, it really can feel like, what are you telling me to do?
Correct. And so
I breathe all day.
The real thing that I wanted to drive home here is that when you understand that you can implement a different type of steady state breathing that will then become the new way that you breathe all the time. Now you're breathing efficiently. You don't have to think about it. You don't even have to take the breathing break because you're so good every minute and every hour of the day that you don't actually need that. And I'm sorry, but that is kind of like really enticing to me. But also to many of my patients, because again, I'm in New York.
We're busy.
But everybody's busy. Everybody's busy. But that also leads to more health benefits. It is important to understand, okay, I'm going into this crazy state. I'm going to stop. I'm going to take a few deep breaths. Or I'm getting ready to do a presentation. Or I'm getting ready to do something stressful. I'm going to stop myself for a second and do all that. Fantastic. But people are like, I can't breathe in for 6, in for 4, out for 6, square breathing. Like, that's okay as an exercise. But you don't exercise all day long. You just don't.
No.
But if you have good, proper posture, you have getting in and out of positions are good. Your transitionary movements, the way that you go to grab your cup out of the cupboard, the way that you're putting the dish into the dishwasher, you're doing all of it, getting down to the toilet, up from the toilet. You can actually be using your body and exercising the right stabilizing muscles with everything you do. Now, I'm not saying don't exercise, okay, because that's really, really important for you. And you should go out for a 20-minute walk 2 times a day at least. However, if you breathe for your health and you literally just go, okay, this is going to be my new breathing strategy. I'm going to let go of my old one because clearly that's not working for me. And then I'm going to work in this way. I'm going to do it as an exercise because I have to retrain my brain to allow for this type of new and efficient breathing. It takes, like I said, about a month or so for you to start kind of jiving with it. And then all of a sudden you start going, wait a minute, I kind of felt better today because maybe I was actually staying in that steady state of breathing longer. And then that just grows and grows and grows, and then it becomes your new normal.
And we build the endurance the same way we build endurance on a treadmill. We build,
Correct. But it does become automatic. That's what I want.
Yes.
The silver lining here is you put in the work and then the transition should be that it becomes automatic. And then maybe you want to check in with it from time to time, but you should get to that point. No matter what, no one can breathe every single day with deep breathing every second of the day. You can't.
No,
That's
it's more
not
about training our automatic response to these noxious stimuli because they're everywhere. They're all there, and they're going to be different, and they're going to come at different times and different intensities. And it's really our response, how we train our response system to that to keep us, like you're saying, at our individual optimal steady state.
Right.
And you were talking about, like, you know, in order to do that, having access to our diaphragm, which, you know, is, for anyone who doesn't know, it's it's like a parachute, like muscle, tent, all sorts of, at the base of your rib cage. And it, you know,
the bottom of your lungs, it's like a dome underneath your lungs.
And it works with your lungs to suck air in, push air out. It's awesome. It is connected to, correlated, works in concert and harmony, if all things are going well, with your pelvic floor.
Correct.
So again, when we're talking about how our breathing and our nervous system, and like you were talking about, like if the bear's in the room, like I'm also not going to like stop and like take a leisurely healthy poop because one, I'm not going to be able to relax to do that. And two, why would I leave a trail for the bear about where I am? You know, and I'm not going to stop and have sex. Like there is this sphincteric response, right? Like, and our whole body tenses, engages. We're ready to run. Our senses are heightened so that we can survive. So, and again, that feeds, if we're constantly living in that elevated chronic stress place, we are constantly clenching our butts. So also everyone let's just take a deep breath and unclench your butt. That's like 1% improvement. And so that can sort of, I use the term feed the beast of this chronic tension in our pelvic floor, which whether or not you're pregnant or have been pregnant, we need a healthy pelvic floor. For all sorts of functions, and also to assist our diaphragm to facilitate that as our fullest range of motion for our optimal breathing. And I just wanted to make the connection of like, we've been talking about breath, and also like, this is part of the reason why.
That's right.
Right. And so it's not just pregnancy. There are other things. There are so many other things in our lives that can happen that change what we have access to with our breathing. And obviously pregnancy and then giving birth to a baby, however you do that, is going to affect this function of your respiratory diaphragm and your pelvic floor. And I want to hear from you, like, a little bit about like what we can do during pregnancy, and also immediately postpartum to rehabilitate. And like you're saying, like, we then have to recalibrate, retrain, and we can make those changes that then they become our steady state, but it may not start that way because there's been a big event. And how we do that and the importance of it, because I also think immediately postpartum, we are kind of taught to be, and then you actually are, because you just had a baby, to be so fearful of our bodies. That, like, I know I've worked with people, they're like, I don't know if I can do anything with you. It's only been 4 weeks. And I'm like, you know, you have to be in your comfort level, but like, all we're going to do is breathe and like lift and lower your arms. Like, like physically, like, you don't have the energy for anything else. And you are breathing and lifting a baby and doing these things all day. Like, we can, I promise you, you know, we will build.
Or twins.
Or two, twins.
Right.
Triplets are a thing.
Sure. I just saw a woman, she's in her 50s. She had twins, in her 40s. And and there's some stuff, you know.
There's stuff. So how do we approach that during pregnancy and immediately postpartum in these times where we are kind of fed a lot of fear about our bodies?
So no, that's a great question. So let's start at preconception. The books, like the book that I wrote, The Wise Woman's Guide to Your Healthiest Pregnancy and Birth, I included a preconception chapter because if you can do a few things before you get pregnant, you're only going to make it a much smoother experience, right? So being even aware of certain things, having your partner on board with certain lifestyle for him, or your sperm donor or whoever, it's important for overall health for certain things to happen during that time. Now, when you can start to improve your breathing with, like we talk about, steady state, as well as with exercise, you're going to have more breadth and openness to the diaphragm. Like what I wish really would be that every single woman that was getting ready to have a baby, go and get body work to open up the diaphragm. Now, during pregnancy, your breathing will be compromised because you can't access your diaphragm. So 100% of women, as I said before, have a breathing dysfunction because you have to compensate to the best of your ability.
There's a baby in there. There's a baby.
Well, there's real estate that's gone. You know,
it's gone.
You got a tiny little closet and you just packed it in, right? So you can't see, you can't even get through it, right? So that poor diaphragm doesn't have the ability to actually do what it's supposed to do.
How could it?
Right. And if you're going on your this is a cool fact, when you're going on your second or your third pregnancy, you might have had a not so great time breathing with the first. Now, with the stimulus of just a fertilized egg starting the process at conception and into the first trimester, when you really have no girth issues, there's no big fat belly going on right now, the baby's teeny, right? That may be enough of a trigger for you to go back in time to the same exact breathing pattern you had when you were 9 months.
Stop it.
Craziness.
But obviously.
Yeah, because the brain goes, here we go again. And then it just goes bump. And then the diaphragm stops working again. But now it's working at an earlier time. It stops working. Like, that's tough. You know, like we should get progressively harder to breathe, but like you're breathing at least a bit in the beginning, you know? So it is pretty crazy. And it's actually really quite rewarding for me because I have some people, you know, that come in and they're like, I already feel different in my body. This is terrible. And we come up with new strategies. They decrease that old strategy. And then trust me when I tell you, it's one of my big testimonials on my pages. All of a sudden you can go through your whole next pregnancy and not have it as bad, actually, than the first. Just because within the pregnancy itself, you've retrained the process, right? To get you to breathe in the right way. So understand that we come up with our own habits. Now, what do women complain about? Oh, I have like neck and shoulder pain. Oh, my mid back is killing me. The baby's kicking up in my ribs. Oh, my back is, tense and my pelvis is going out of whack. So the diaphragm is the conductor of the core. You said earlier about symphony. It's very much a symphony. We do not want to hear, right? We don't want those notes. We want la, 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 right? So we want to see that everything is moving and being supported in the movements that you're going in, and that it is a symphony. This turns on first, then the next comes in, and then the next comes in.
I'm now picturing in the Little Mermaid before Kiss the Girl.
Yeah.
And the reeds, which is also funny because in a recent episode we talked about part of your world being like a feminist manifesto. So that's also very funny. That's probably why I thought of Little Mermaid.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, no, but you're right. It's exactly that. That's a great image. I love it.
Our diaphragm is Sebastain.
That's exactly right. So Sebastain is telling all of these little creatures to do their thing, and it's a flow. And look at the water. La 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 la. Everything's flowing. Yeah.
Sha la 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 la. Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna try to get the diaphragm to do as much as it can. Okay. Yes. Everybody's got a different body. Some people have a really narrow rib cage. Some people are wider. Some people are longer. Some people are short-waisted. There's so many different ways. So you have to come up with what's right for you. My big trick for pregnancy is not only, and I go about this in the book, like, what are your strategies? How can you think about it? Here's a few different cues to try. But no matter what, when you adjust your breathing, you might start yawning a little bit. That's a normal, like, kind of side effect of trying to manipulate your breath to change it. So don't worry about that so much. Don't think like, this is making me tired. No, actually, your body just doesn't know how to re-regulate. So it might just give you a yawn. So don't get crazy about that. Okay. So just know that that's like a little bit of a side effect of trying to tap into these muscles and the body's re-regulating. But you also go through whatever the potential, cue might be that taps into the diaphragm a little bit better. But when you're pregnant, it's really great to go into inversions. So if you go into like not full inversion, but like a down dog, right? Getting into, you can actually access a little bit more of your diaphragm in like that kind of down dog position. And I don't care. You don't have to have your legs straight and all sorts. People are like, what are you talking about? I can't get into a down dog. Do it in the most modified way you want, but just kind of doing that. Or if you're okay with being on your back, especially earlier in the pregnancy, you can pile up a bunch of pillows under your tush to
or
make
yoga
your
block.
pelvis higher than your head. And that also changes the intra-abdominal pressure and the intra-abdominal contents to allow for more openness in the diaphragm. So when people are really tanking, not feeling good, have an immense amount of nausea can be a symptom of hypocapnia. Hypocapnia is when we're blowing off too much CO2. So I don't want to nerd out too much, but when you blow off too much CO2, your body is like, oh crap, like my lung pressure is changing. Now I have to suck in because I don't want my lung to collapse. So I'm going to suck in extra air only to then not know what the hell to do with it, only to blow it off again. And then all of a sudden we're in a vicious cycle, which hence can be one of the precursors behind a panic attack or an anxiety attack or an asthma attack.
Because also that balance is off, right. And our brain doesn't understand.
It can't help itself.
The difference. It's just like, we are not okay.
Right.
Let's freak out.
And so what ends up happening is that the physiology then is just kind of almost like, it's like saying like, oh, I need more water. You open up the floodgates and now it's too much water. And then it's like, oh, wait, pull it back. Okay, no, we can't have nothing. We need a steady stream. Where the hell is it? And you just can't get that right regulation. So what ends up happening is that we want to kind of like, so in the presence of a significant nausea or a panic or an asthma attack or whatever, what do people do? They grab a paper bag and they breathe into a paper bag. I never understood that before I did my 2.5 years of breathing training. I was like, what the hell is that? Like, the people are saying they can't get enough breath and you're putting a bag around their mouth? What the hell's that? Well, it is that when you get that air hunger and you're sucking in, because like, some people are like, I can't breathe. And you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, you're breathing way harder than I am. What do you mean you can't breathe? Yeah, you are. What the hell? Right?
Yeah.
That does not fully constitute what the hell is going on, right? So when you take a paper bag, what you're doing when you get that air hunger and you suck in that extra oxygen, as you get into that pattern of blowing off too much carbon dioxide, you're going to actually sneak in some carbon dioxide back into the system.
Right, a higher concentration of it to help rebalance the imbalance.
So during COVID, some of my pregnant patients were like, I'm actually doing okay with the mask because they needed a little extra CO2 to re-regulate themselves.
Oh my God, wait, this is blowing my mind because I also, like for myself and also with clients that I work with, like as the world has opened up and mask mandates have changed, I wore my mask a bit longer before I felt comfortable taking it off in certain areas. Yeah. And I always have it with me. And in my mind, I was like, it's like a safety. It's like a security blanket. Like if I put it on, I just feel like I'm doing something. And it's not, even if it were all in my head, but it is also preventing some of that imbalance and keeping me
a little bit chill. So now some people, they hate it, right? They don't need it. They don't need it. And it's not, their deal. But 100%. For anyone that is erring a little bit on a breathing dysfunction side or has this hypocapnic tendency, which is really more of the population than anything else. It's very rare that you're breathing so optimally that you're above optimal. Like that's very rare. This doesn't happen. And also just with the pressurized system of like where we are on Earth and, it does change with altitude, but, we won't go into that. But basically what I care about So the ideal, you know how like blood pressure is 120 over 80? Regular, 100 to 120 over, like whatever, just the range is there. But let's say that's measured by millimeters of mercury of pressure mercury pressure. Okay. So the normal steady state of breathing should be between like 34 to 35 millimeters of mercury of pressure. And I measured this with a capnograph, which is a capnography machine that essentially looks through a nasal cannula and measures how much is your end tidal CO2, what's left in your lungs based on how much you're taking in and how much you're blowing out. And are you blowing off a little bit too much? Not to the point of anxiety or panic or asthma attack, but enough that you're a little compromised. So maybe now your body's going to go, I'm not getting everything I need, so let me accessory breathe through my shoulders. And then you'll have chronic shoulder pain and migraines. Or maybe you say, my diaphragm's so tight, I can't really get that nice breath in and out, and I don't have good exchange, so I'm going to compensate with some other strategy. Right. Or because I'm in the presence of that bear or that emotional trigger or that stressful boss or email or whatever, or my kid is crying through the night and I can't take it anymore.
Oh my God.
Your breathing may have adjusted and have stayed in a negative state for a little too long that has then led to this actual change in the chemical balance of the body. So we can cramp up. It's like, what the hell am I cramping about? Because your body is changing all sorts of chemical reactions in the body.
All of those metabolic exchanges and processes are compromised.
So just to interject one last thing, when we breathe, we also, how wise our body is, right? When, let's say you're late and you're running for the bus, okay, or the train or the whatever, and you see it and you're like, oh man, I'm late, and you just bolt. So now you just decide to do a sprint. You get there. If you didn't do the normal huffing and puffing, right? That's what we do. You don't just run, bolt, and you're like, okay, I'm fine, I'm normal. No. You have to blow off that lift, that crazy rise in lactic acid that is produced by your muscular activity, right?
Yes.
We have byproducts of certain movements. So that lactic acid has to be taken up by the system and to bring us back to not being in an acidic state, right? So if you didn't blow that off, which takes probably seconds or maybe a minute if it's really bad, right? And you're blowing it off, it can take you as little as 8 hours and as much as 5 days to get rid of that lactic acid just through metabolic processes internally. But instead, we change our breathing to be super efficient, and within seconds, within minutes, bam, we're in a steady state because our breath did the job for us. We blew off the lactic acid, we restored that balance in the body, bam. So that's one way to understand, because I'm not going to go into all the chemical bases and acids and blah, 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 and the liver function and the kidney function that changes with breathing and blah, 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 blah. All these different things. It's very cellularly reactive with a lot of like synapses that have to go on in the body also, and all sorts of wonderful things that keep us well, keep us functioning optimally. So that's why Dr. Weil said you got to get people to breathe the right way. Because when you do, a lot of the stuff that should be happening happens. And when those things are happening, your body feels good. Exactly. It's working for you. So just like we, have a couple of seconds of pleasure, and then all of a sudden a baby comes out of us 9 months later, right? We don't sit there and think, okay, make the eyes, okay, make the teeth. Like we don't do it. It just happens, right? Yeah, let's go. Big ones. Okay, so but we do have this wonderful way that we can change. There's a positive way where we manipulate our breath to actually optimize our steady state. So that's a cool thing.
So it is so cool. And it's also like, it is so cool. And there's so much happening as a result of this, sometimes oversimplified, but ultimately simple, given the complexity of there's a real rate of return here. The rate of the return rate of return.
The return on your
investment. That's what I was looking for. Right? Return on investment.
Exactly. So
is very, very high.
Super.
So coming out of whether it's a pregnancy or an injury where for more than, 3 weeks? You've had 3 or 4 weeks that you've been in this state. So now you've been in a chronic state of, we'll say, dysfunction. So meaning like not functioning optimally. So saying that, right, in a super non-judgmental way, our body is doing a beautiful job of protecting us. And sometimes, then it serves us and then it stops. So afterwards, so like immediately postpartum or once the acute injury has resolved, what is your, obviously this is, you work with people for months, years, on this, but like, what is your, like,
or
what would be
just
the
as little
first
as 3 sessions
or 3 sessions?
Really?
Depending, meeting people exactly where they are.
Right.
And what would be like the first thing that you would tell or instruct someone to do? Okay.
So I was asked by Weill Cornell doctors, the OB/GYN department of Weill Cornell, and HSS physiatrist, right? We did a study together, and I designed the first ever early return to exercise postpartum. So women that are involved, we did the pilot study. It was a huge success, and now we're getting ready to go into the actual study. So 200 women, well, I think it's more now. I think it's going to be more. 500 maybe, will be enrolled, and half of them will be assigned the exercises that I've asked them to do, and the other half will do nothing and just kind of report on their progress and things like that. So in week 2, after pregnancy, or I would say even after injury, because this all applies to both, you would be focusing on expanding the diaphragm again. Because now you don't have the girth of the baby. You have still a belly, for sure. That's not going to go down right away. But you don't have the pressure that you did with the actual
You have access again.
There. That's right.
You have access.
But
the potential.
Your body won't know that it even has access because there's all sorts of I don't know what's happening here, and so maybe
all we know is we're terrified.
Right. We're terrified. Well, maybe you're breastfeeding, maybe you're not. It doesn't matter. It applies for both. So what you want to do is you want to take your hands to the sides and back of your lower ribs.
I'm doing it.
Yep. And what you want to think about is bringing your tongue to the roof of your mouth. You want to be breathing only in and out through your nose. And you want to be trying to expand your hands with air. I talk about a tube going from your nose down, bypassing your chest, and then bifurcating out to each side, to the right and the left side of your lower ribs, below the boobs, above the waistline, or around the waistline. Okay?
Yeah, they're low.
And you want to be thinking, they're low. You don't want to be by your pelvic bones, just slightly above. And you're going to be putting your hands to the back, and you're going to think about breathing into the back and sides of your lower ribs, widening them outward. This will not make you wide. Don't get scared. Okay, so what we want to care about, because I was like, I want to stay thin. Okay, so we're going to think about widening the back and sides of the lower ribs like a billowing action. So you're just going to think about it being very soft. Now, if you are immediately postpartum or in an injury, I would do this lying down the way I talked about before, where your tush is a little higher than your head, so that you're actually promoting a position that actually supports the diaphragm even more to do its job and to come back online. So it'll happen better and easier and much more automatic. So what we're thinking about
again, because this system has been compromised. Because it has 100% of the time. So we're honoring 3 to 5 minutes, that. To breathe like that for 3 to 5 minutes? Yeah, so you take so long for your brain to understand what the hell you're doing and that it's something different. But what I care about is long-lasting change. I don't want you to have to do this. So if you just do this for like a couple of seconds, a couple of breaths, I did great, 5 breaths, bye. Your body's like, okay, that was nice, all right, good. But you want now we're going to go back to freaking out.
Right, so now you have to go back into the time that your nervous system actually starts to recognize that this is something that I want to I want to save this. I want to put this card in there. This. I want to save it. So you're going to do it for 3 to 5 minutes of just thinking about breathing sides and back of your lower ribs. Now, let's say you have a baby. You're going to be holding the baby and you're going to be thinking about this breathing when you're breastfeeding or bottle feeding. Why not? You know, don't look at your phone because you're bored because the baby's just sucking away. Of course, you're looking at your baby, you're connecting with your baby, but let's connect to your breath too. One last thing, the breathing, when we breathe optimally, we actually amplify the beauty and the joy of the situation. And so when you're around someone that you love, or you're doing something that you really like, your body goes, ooh, I like this. And it automatically improves the breathing because it makes it more vivid. When we're around people we don't like, when we're around stressful situations, that all of what we've been talking about happens. We retract, we recoil, and we don't breathe the right way because we don't want this to be vivid. I don't want to remember that I was here. I'm leaving, you know?
Let's make that nice and blurry.
I'm going to dissociate myself from here. Check out, you know, I'm here, but I'm not really here. So that whole idea of, okay, I'm here. Guess what? When women say, you know, I just feel flat, maybe I'm going through postpartum depression, well, guess what? Like, why not tap into your breathing? Maybe you'll start to see the color again in that experience. Maybe you'll start to be able to feel like you could connect more. Maybe you'll get that part of you that you know is in there somewhere that will actually be putting on a smile and really happy about